My city, where the wheels of the global economy never stop turning. A concrete metropolis of unparalleled strength and purpose that drives the business world. Detroit is a tough place. If you're not careful, it can chew you up and spit you out. But if you work hard, you can really hit it big. And I mean really big. My name's Elric, and I'm the third largest podcast here in Detroit. But it wasn't always so easy. About 13 years ago, I was seriously in trouble.
You asked interrogative questions out of my face. It's gone.
What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Albert?
13 years ago, I was in big trouble. I'm in big trouble right now. Things don't really change that much in my life. I want to apologize to my good friends for our late start today. I've been following the Detroit City Council meeting this morning to see whether any council members or whether Gabe Leland himself would say something about the criminal charges filed against him last Friday for misconduct in office. That was a Free Press exclusive, and it follows up on our reporting that this case, the bribery case against Gabe Leland, may be resolved in state court. We're still following that story and expect to have something for you later today at freep.com, including a look at the Filthy Four, the other 4 Detroit City Council members who have been charged with corruption in the last 15 years, all of whom it did not end well. 3 of them went to prison. 1 of them went to the grave. So more on that coming up at the Free Press. We appreciate you waiting for our Facebook Live broadcast to start. For those of you who are not watching Facebook Live, you're getting the whole show. We appreciate you listening, because that's the only way to get every single second of this show. That may be a bad thing. We tend to think it's not so bad. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, we love you doing that too, but you're going to miss some great stuff on the back end of the show. So please take a listen when you get a chance. And now, they've been waiting patiently. Let me introduce my team, my group of future assistants, actually my current assistants. Of course, there's Sean Windsor.
You've been lazy, you've been nothing but trouble, and now you cut them off as they're fighting each other for who should be fired. Sean. Yes, sir. You're fired.
Okay, so Sean's gone. That leaves us with Matt Jennings.
You know what? Matt, you're fired. I think that is so stupid for you to say, you're fired.
Okay.
Go.
All right.
Terrible. You shouldn't use that expression anymore either.
You don't use that soft expression.
How stupid can you be?
Just get your 18 wheels rolling, pal. And then the guy who keeps coming back, no matter how many reasons we give him not to come back, Mr. Mark Fellhauer.
Mark, this is a sales task. You didn't sell a single thing. And again, in this boardroom, we've never had a team lose so badly. You're all fired. All 4 are fired.
Yeah, I don't need any of you guys. All I need is this thermos. Maybe this remote control. Maybe this chair.
Nothing like a man in charge.
Well, we appreciate you guys sticking around for our special all Leland episode. We're going to be talking about the late Burton Leland, the father of Gabe Leland. He was a state senator before he was a county commissioner, before I caught up with him living where he wasn't supposed to be. We had some pretty crazy encounters. And then I'll talk to you a little bit about my very tumultuous relationship with Mr. Gabe Leland, who at the moment is still a member of our Detroit City Council, sometimes called the Common Council. Some people would say they are uncommon in the number of people who ended up getting charged with crimes, but we'll leave that to your good judgment. And we are brought to you this week by Manscaped, manscaped.com. It is the personal shaver that they pitch it for men, but it's not just for men, it's for ladies, both as users and as partners of men. So if you use the promo code ML at manscaped.com, you can get 20% and free shipping off your own personal grooming device. They also have some other products there that seem pretty nice. We have gotten some very good reviews from members of our show who use the manscaping thing. We don't want to tell you who they are because we really we want to keep their privates private. And it's an image that
I use it.
Just don't. Okay, well, there goes our ratings.
I have no problem mentioning it.
Okay, well, he of the well-shorn sack.
It takes a full 90 minutes.
Yes. Okay, now everybody seems to be quite well-groomed. Anyway, this is a potential long-term sponsor for our show, but they're only going to be with us if you contact them, make a purchase. Doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be small. It just has to be a purchase. Use the promo code ML. And I should tell you that all of our sponsors kind of work on the same basis. They like the show. We like them. But if they don't know that you were sent there by ML Soul of Detroit, they will be gone too. And guess what follows next?
What?
It's us.
Oh.
It's just like when people say kill all the bugs. Well, then the birds die. And then the people who eat birds die. And then the people who shoot birds for marching past their mansion in St. Louis, well, they probably will live forever. But we'll get to that later on in the show. I'm getting, once again, too far ahead of myself. It may be because I'm so well fed by our friends at The Butchery.
Wow, what a smooth
our
segue.
Facebook Live sponsors. They produce such quality meat that you do not have to be a top-notch chef like Sean Windsor to get good eats out of whatever you pick up at their meat counter. I go there because they have the best quality USDA prime and all grass-fed beef, and all their pork is 100% Michigan raised. It's convenient. You can get your meat in any portion you want, anything from a single steak to half a cow. Everything Chef Dave puts out is made in-house, like their high-end sausage and brats, and even his wife's delicious homemade desserts, high in flavor, hopefully not high in calorie, but try them and see. All this month for listeners, Chef Dave is giving a free pound of bacon to everyone who spends $50 or more. You just have to tell them that ML sent you. The Butchery is on Orchard Lake Road. It's easy to find. Just take Telegraph to Orchard Lake and head west. I promise you it's worth the drive. I've made it, and I'm going back.
Bravo.
Call 248-682-COWS or visit their website, thebutcherysl.com. It's the best place for prime meats, eats, and treats.
So a little late today because you were watching that looked like a very thrilling Zoom meeting of Detroit City Council. Look how exhausted you are already about it.
Wow.
And I thought I saw on your tweet that Gabe Leland was there and doing his duty.
Well, he was there, as one of my colleagues who was also watching pointed out. He looks pretty tuckered out. I don't know that he's had a lot of good sleep lately, which I think in the past he used to sleep pretty well, because I caught him spending the night at Gasper Fiore's mansion on Lakeshore Drive in Grosse Pointe. So he's had better days. But if you saw the story we posted last Friday in the Free Press, it looks like Mr. Leland is getting ready to end his council career several years, or at least a couple of years after I first exposed that he was doing some dealing, approving contracts, voting for contracts for.
I'm just going to keep doing this every time I hear it.
Oh, sure. I thought
Sean is literally.
I thought you were showing people where you plan to use your manscaper on your shoulders.
I just wanted you to get a sense of how often that happens, so I'm going to keep going.
In case.
Good work, Sean.
In case no one mentioned that I wrote that story for the Free Press. But anyways, his attorney made some comments that make it sound like he's getting ready to resign very soon. And so we just wanted to see if City Council was going to say anything about it. They historically have kept their mouth quiet when one of their colleagues gets in trouble, and whether he might resign today. But it looks like unless he says something before the end of the meeting, he's just going to keep cashing our paychecks until he can't anymore, which is.
Well, where do you want to start with him? Do you want to provide the background as to, what he was charged with? And
well, let's do This Is Your Life Leland family and start with Burton Leland, who was a dynamo in Northwest Detroit. You know that Burton Leland was very constituent oriented when a Jewish white guy from Northwest Detroit keeps getting elected to the state Senate until term limit turns him out. Now, for people who don't know that much about Detroit's history, there used to be a very robust Jewish community in the city of Detroit, and there are lots of places like some of the theaters by Wayne State, like the Northwest Activity Center in Northwest Detroit, appropriately, that were Jewish institutions. They were synagogues that had been converted into theaters, in some cases churches. They were activity center, gyms, fitness places, community hubs that were built and maintained by Detroit's Jewish community. Most of those folks have left for the suburbs, but Burton Leland remained and was elected time and time again as a state senator because while he was a pain in the balls, he was known as a guy who could get things done for the people of Northwest Detroit. Now, eventually, he hit term limits and had to move out of the Senate, and he then turned to Wayne County Commission, which has no term limits, and continued to run for office and get elected as a Wayne County Commissioner, all of which is all fair and good and speaks well of both his appeal to the populace and his ability to serve his constituents. There's just one problem. Somewhere in the course of this story, which runs about 25 years, I mean, he moved to East Lansing and basically lived in East Lansing and was occasionally caught in East Lansing doing his gardening and things like that. And I decided to do this story for Fox 2 and ran out there and caught him doing his gardening. It was one of the most extraordinary encounters I've ever had because he did at least two, maybe three wardrobe changes in the course of our encounter on his front lawn, where he thought he looked bad because he just finished working out. So he went inside and changed. Then he came out to take some questions because he was a tough guy. He didn't like the questions, so he went back inside. Then he changed again. And he came out and took some more questions. He didn't like those, and so he went back inside. And then he came back out through his garage, and I asked him a couple more questions.
I remember that.
And he didn't like it. And then there was some video of Leland closing the garage door on me as I'm still asking him some questions. So
With Mike, you had your microphone in hand, and you were sticking it down towards the bottom right as it was closed. I remember that one well.
He initially loved me because he hated Kwame Kilpatrick, and we were doing some stories on Kwame Kilpatrick, and he pulled me aside one time on Mackinac Island when we were up there for the leadership conference and said, you got to stop doing all these stories on Kilpatrick. And I said, why? He's like, well, they're great, but you're pounding him so many times, people are starting to feel sorry for him. And I think that if you keep doing these stories, it's going to help him get reelected. To which I said, we don't do stories to help or hinder a candidate. We do as many stories as we believe are fair and true and people deserve to know. Burton Leland, being a very smart politician, realized that at some point, this turns the other way. People start to say, now you're just picking on him.
Yeah.
So Burton was always locked in these tough races, and he had this thing where he'd always, one way that white guys win Democratic primaries in Detroit is they make sure there are lots of black candidates. So he was known for recruiting black candidates to run essentially against him, but really for him, because he wanted to split the black vote so he could win the Democratic primary, and then there's never a Republican opponent to worry about.
Wow, how diabolical.
Yeah, so he was running for re-election when my story broke, and one of his former aides called me up and said, hey, I want to go on camera and basically tell everybody how Burton does not live in this little condo that he had, and that it was basically just a mail drop, which anyone could tell because it was just, crap cascading out of the mailbox. And he said, basically, the only reason he has that place is because to establish residency. And in fact, the cable bill is in my name because I started staying there. And then it basically became kind of a love nest where he and other people would go just to bang chicks and hang out. And so I said, well, this is powerful testimony from an insider. When can we go on camera? And the guy, he kept putting me off. I said, we're getting close to the election. We can't put a devastating story like that on so close to the election. So, it's either now or never. And the guy said, well, here's the reason why I won't go on camera. I don't have any teeth.
What? Really?
He was ashamed they didn't have any teeth, and he was trying to get some teeth, but he couldn't get some teeth in time. And in the end, he said, look, my son plays football. He has a mouth guard. Maybe I can put the mouth guard in and draw lines on it so it will look like teeth.
Oh, no.
My theory is that he was never going to go on camera. He was just using me to try and leverage some money out of Burton Leland, basically saying, hey, I'm talking to Elric. If you don't give me some teeth money.
Nice to know government officials are operating like that, even in their assistants. Even it rolls down to their assistants.
Well, this guy was a former employee, so he may have been disgruntled too. But I was just like, what kind of crazy worms come up when you flood the garden? But so later on, I ran into Burton because he lived in East Lansing at a Michigan State football game. He was at a tailgate that a buddy of mine threw, and that a lot of politicos go to, and I usually stop by just to sort of tickle the wire and see what people know. Burton shows up, and he immediately wants to go at it with me because he was a real hard on. I mean, he was a very engaging, charming guy, even though he was,
most politicians are.
Yeah, and he was one of those guys who, like to take the fight to people. That's why he was so effective in constituent services, because I think people would rather help Burton and get him the hell out of their office than have him come back every day. And so I said to him, hey, I'm not surprised to see you. It's a short walk from your house, the one you live in, not the one that you claim. He's like, okay, let's not start that. So I just started going on. He's wearing a Michigan hat, a University of Michigan. I said, first of all, you represent Detroit, but you live in East Lansing. Then you come to a Michigan State tailgate, but you're wearing a Michigan hat. I'm like, what the hell? So he's like, okay, here we go. So we're going at it. It's, we're doing the dozens. It's actually a lot of fun. We're both, I think, kind of enjoying it at some level. And a letter in his last reelection campaign had gone out accusing his opponent of breaking up the marriage of a woman in the district, basically saying, don't vote for this harlot because she stole my man. And the woman who sent it out was not very sophisticated, did not have very much money, and it must have cost a lot of money to produce the letter and to mail it out. And so the theory was that Burton had paid for everything, that he had just given her money to send out this letter to 86, his opponent. He would not admit to it. The woman who sent the letter would not return my calls, but her son told me, yeah, my mom doesn't have the money to do that. We're sure that she got the money from Burton Leland to do this. And in fact, her ex-husband started dating this other candidate after they'd gotten divorced. So the whole thing was kind of baloney.
Yeah. Anyways,
it was effective. Burton wins that race. And so when we're done jousting with each other, we kind of walk to the game. Then I run into him at one of the porta-johns because Burton can never stop fighting. So he wants to restart the fight. And I said, now what about that letter you sent out? And he's like, no, I didn't do that. You can't prove that. I'm like, okay. I said, well, let's just go to the game. Let's just move on, shake hands, move on. And as we're parting, he says, that was some letter, wasn't it? So,
oh God. Well, that's kind of a sly politician, though.
Yeah. So he was a rascal. He was kind of a lovable rogue, I guess you'd say, if you don't really care about the felony of providing a false affidavit and representing a district that you don't represent. But anyway, throughout Gabe Leland's life.
So do you find Gabe Leland to have the same personality as his dad?
No. Gabe is a odd duck. Most people who have dealt with him find him to be strange.
How so?
He has trouble making eye contact. He's one of these false intimacy guys where he'll kind of lean in on you and you're like, oh, I don't know about that. And he's kind of like one of those elbow guys. So we did a story on city council secrets, and one of the secrets was that he had been selling dope when he was in high school. And he denied it. And he didn't deny that he had a possession case, but he denied selling it. Now, of course, Burton got involved and got him a pretty light sentence by, intervening and trying to convince the police and prosecutors and everybody that he's not such a bad kid.
Yeah.
So when we caught up with Gabe outside City Hall, I asked him, I said, what about the second case? He said, there is no second case. And so I held up the police report and said, what about this one? And then things kind of went downhill. Not long after that, I saw him at Pony Ride in Detroit, which is kind of a pop-up, interesting business incubator in Corktown. And they have a sort of a maker's fair every holiday season. And Gabe was there. And because he's so squirrely, he wanted to kind of nut up to me and show that he had nothing to worry about, that he had nothing to hide. And
which
Devin
means he probably
Skillian
does.
was there too.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, we just shown that he had been hiding stuff.
Yeah.
So Devin Skillian and I are there talking, and Gabe kind of butts in and is, doing his little bebop. And then Devin's like, okay, I gotta move on. And then Gabe's whole thing to me is like, hey, how are things going at Fox 2? I'm like, okay, I guess really? I'd heard things. I said, what'd you hear? He said, I don't know. I heard maybe things aren't going so well for you there. And I said, well, if I'm out, let me know because I'll find something else. He's like, I'm just saying,
Oh, what a dork.
Years later, I guess I am gone from Fox 2, and I guess he's
he was
on his
right.
way out too.
He was right.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to go back to something you said, because when you confronted him the second time and you said, hey, I here it is. And I remember when we had Walt check in, and he was talking about early on in his career when he wasn't that prepared. Has that ever happened where someone's like, no, and you didn't have the item in front of him?
Well, one time I went to go get somebody at City Hall. The city was trying to get people to pay their overdue parking fees. And this was a Kilpatrick administration initiative to try and raise money for the city. It was kind of an amnesty program. And I had found that there were all kinds of people in the Kilpatrick administration. There's your Kilpatrick reference, Sean. I know you're waiting for it.
And so, Sean, he's on the precipice of admitting he didn't do something perfectly too.
That's right. So I found that all kinds of people in his administration owed tons of parking tickets, including his girlfriend, Christine Beatty, including the head of the parking department, including the spokesman for the Pay Back Your Tickets campaign. And I was waiting for somebody to come out of City Hall to confront them on this. And the mayor's spokesman came out, and he said his name's James Canning, a completely unprincipled bag of stuff. Anyways, he says, hey, who are you here for? And he was kind of laughing, like, yeah, this is funny. You're out here, you didn't get your guy, but somebody's in trouble. And I said, well, James, today we're here for you.
Oh.
And I wasn't ready for him, but so we just did an interview and we took the opportunity and he stammered his way through it. It was a disaster. Then later on, I went to catch up with the deputy mayor who had a ton of tickets, and I went to go pull my paperwork, but I wasn't, it was one of these things where I had a ton of paperwork. I said, well, that's not what it says here. And I'm like, oh, hold on, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I know it's in here somewhere. And that's when I learned that you got to stack your documents and you got to put little tabs on them. And
that's
it was
tough.
And he stood there and he's like, okay, all right then. And in the end, he said, yeah, those are my kids' tickets. I paid all those.
Oh, God.
Well, it's still his problem because he had tens of thousands of tickets before that. So that also ran in the family. But yeah, it was embarrassing and it was terrible TV to sit there and say, wait a minute, I got you in here somewhere. Just if you wouldn't mind standing here while I get ready to jump on you again.
It gives them time to think of an excuse as to, okay, where's he going with this? What am I going to say? If you're not tabbed and ready to show him the evidence.
Right. And he was a pretty smooth customer. So he was not only ready, but when I gave it to him, he's like, yeah, I paid all those. And I don't think he had, but he basically figured,
prove him wrong. Yeah.
This jerk's not ready. I'll just tell him that and I'll go in the building and what's he left with?
Well, it doesn't happen often with you. I'll tell you that much.
Now, Channel 4 would not run this story because this was in the Kilpatrick had gotten to them era. But I did exact unintentionally a level of revenge on them because when they found out that I was doing this story, they went and paid back every parking ticket they had on a station vehicle. So so they ended up paying for the story one way or another.
Well, do you want to go deeper into what you just said there about that era?
The Channel 4 era? Well, yeah. I mean, that was when they hired me from the Free Press because the Free Press didn't want me to cover Kwame Kilpatrick anymore. They wanted me to basically move to state political coverage. And then Channel 4 said they absolutely wanted me to cover Kwame Kilpatrick. And so that's the only reason I went over there. They contacted Jim and I, and they said, would you guys be interested in coming over here? Jim and I did one of the most hilarious screen tests probably in television news history, a copy of which I think Jim still has on VHS somewhere.
Oh, we got to see that.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. And then in the end, I just ended up going over there because they put Jim on the investigative reporting team, which was the right call. I mean, he's a great reporter and has done a great job there. And they didn't have room for me. And so they wanted to, basically have me do something else. And if there's anything people in this town know about me over the last 20 years is I'm willing to do just about anything. But if we disagree about what I should do, then I'll go find someplace else to do what I do. And so I went to Channel 4. Now, within a few months of being there, we did a story where we pounded the mayor and his team on their false credentials. And the mayor didn't like that. So we sent a bunch of people over to Channel 4 to basically back them down. They succeeded. No one told me that we were no longer going to do any serious reporting about Kwame Kilpatrick, and I was left to twist in the wind for the next year or so, wondering
why would they back? Why would they back down from that? What would he possibly have over them? I mean, how much? What, denied access to him?
So this was never explained to me in the same way that was never explained to me that, hey, that thing we hired you to do, we don't want you to do anymore.
Yeah.
But he caused them a lot of trouble. So maybe it just wasn't worth it. You know, a lot of stations would pound on nobodies because nobodies never fight back. They just can't afford to, or they rarely do. So maybe they thought, yeah, every one of these stories are going to take too much of us time. Let's move on. Some people have speculated it's because the city of Detroit is a key partner in the auto show and the Thanksgiving parade, both of which were exclusive to Channel 4 at that time. And so some people have speculated that they didn't want to jeopardize those two franchises.
That's embarrassing. I would think he would need that station more than they needed him.
Well, that's always the case.
But obviously, I have hindsight to back up
there's lots of politicians who say they're going to cut the media off, and in the end,
they need them.
The media is still here.
Yeah.
You know? But
what did they tell you, Mike?
They never did. That was one of the things that was so frustrating, and it may just be that the general manager wanted to play footsie with the mayor. The general manager was fairly new to town, and thought that, you know, the mayor's a cool dude, and maybe it's better to be the mayor's friend than to be the mayor's enemy. Because, you know, Sean, you and I have worked in a lot of towns and for a lot of papers. And would you say there's another city where you've been where the media, in particular, someplace like the Detroit Free Press, or like a reporter like Steve Wilson on TV, has basically said, I am going to stand against all the bullshit in City Hall, and I don't care what anybody thinks?
I mean, I've been out of the towns where there are reporters like that. I like to think there are reporters like that in most towns, don't you? That's been my experience. I mean, It wasn't like that for you in Chicago?
I don't know that any place I've worked has had the what I would say sort of an adversarial relationship with administrations that we see here in Detroit at times.
Maybe in television in particular. I would say the other thing, and I don't want to speak for Channel 4. This was before the Kilpatrick stuff really, really blew up, right? Because you went to Channel 4 and then you came back, and that's when it really got big, and then you went to Fox. And I don't know if it was a ratings thing for them, but I know from us, I remember at the Free Press, there was this idea back then that because a lot of the readers were in the suburbs, right? So let's just be real about what we're talking about. White readers, largely black city, and there was some thinking back then that a lot of those readers just didn't care, right? So when you were trying to get on the investigative team and cover the city, I mean, let's be honest about what was really happening. It wasn't because the Free Press was trying to protect Kilpatrick in any way. It was everything to do with what a reader's going to want to read about and trying to figure that out. And it was, we think about it very differently. We've evolved, fortunately, and come a long way. Well, we also didn't have the metrics like we do now. But let's talk about what some of that really was about.
Well, actually, at that time, the Kilpatrick stuff was pretty hot because we had done the Navigator, we had done the credit cards, we'd done the Friends and Family. I mean, there were a lot of stories that pretty much put him at death's door when it came time for re-election. What happened at the Free Press was they just felt like he had a brush with death. And like a lot of guys who get out of the drunken driving wrecks say, I'll never drink again. They were sorely mistaken, but they also wanted to enhance their political coverage. And there was a feeling, I think, at that time that that there were more readers in the suburbs and that we need to shift our reporting to go where the readers are. Now, the mistake in that logic, which has always been the mistake.
I agree, it was a mistake, yeah.
Yeah, is that even when the Detroit Pistons were in Auburn Hills, they were still the Detroit Pistons, and we still care about things in Detroit. I don't know that anybody cares about the Auburn Hills anything. So, you know, we all associate with Detroit. Detroit is the hub of the wheel. You care about what's going on in bars and restaurants in Detroit because you might go to them. You don't really care about what's going on in bars and restaurants in White Lake Township because most of us don't know where it is and we ain't going to go there. No disrespect to White Lake Township.
To that point, ML, what kind of feedback have you gotten regarding Gabe Leland in the misconduct? Because, he is a city council member of Detroit of one specific district, but what he did is pretty egregious.
Yeah, so just to get people caught up, what he's accused of doing is the feds indicted him, a federal grand jury indicted him on bribery counts for allegedly demanding payment from Bob Carmack, who's a fairly well-known Detroit businessman now, sort of a gadfly scoundrel type.
If anything, he picked the wrong man to get a bribe from.
Right. And Carmack was pissed off at the time, so he went to the feds and went to the FBI, which he knew because the FBI had been talking to him about some other things he knew. And he said, this guy's demanding money from me. You want me to do anything about it? They wired him up. They gave him some government money. He says he handed it to one of Leland's aides, who then said she handed it back to Leland. The feds say they have electronic evidence, either wiretaps or video of Leland telling Carmack, yeah, I got the money. You're lucky I didn't ask you for 30, but I like you. And he was charged with bribery counts. Now, at some point, I think the feds started getting worried about old Bob Carmack, who's been in all kinds of trouble, and him being the linchpin witness on this. And so plea negotiations started, and this has been headed towards state court, where the presumption is Leland will get an easier landing. And now that he's been charged with misconduct in office, that's certainly less severe than a federal bribery charge. The maximum sentence is 5 years as opposed to bribery, which is 10 years. And my guess is he's going to plead guilty. His lawyers made some comments to the effect that they're going to resolve this in state court. He's going to plead guilty. He's going to have to resign from office, and he's probably not going to do any time. So,
slap on the wrist.
He'll walk away from the car crash, but he'll have no career. And he didn't really have much of a career outside of politics. His old man fostered his career in politics. He also ran for a state house from the district that his family had lived in, served his 6 years. After that, he found a job working as like a community liaison for the DMC, which some people have speculated was a favor that Mike Duggan had done to keep him from starving.
What does a city council member make?
Well, I think some of the cutbacks that they suffered under the bankruptcy put their salary, and they've gotten raises a couple times since, have put their salary somewhere around $90,000 a year. They also get free use of a very nice loaded Ford Explorer. They don't have to pay auto insurance, which in Detroit saves you thousands of dollars a year. They don't have to pay gas. That saves a lot of money too. And I suspect they don't pick up many tabs when they go out for meals.
Yeah,
they also have a lot of recesses, which they all tell me they work like hell over those recesses, but there's an awful lot of them. And other than some committee work and constituent work, they go to work one day a week on Tuesday to vote on stuff.
Oh, God. What does a state house rep make?
Somewhere between $55,000 and $75,000. They also get $10,000 in expenses, and they can get mileage for going to work, which we also did a story at Fox 2 where Betty Cook Scott stopped going to work but kept taking her expense money and her mileage money, which was classic.
Out of those two gigs, though, it seems like being a Detroit City Council member is more lucrative.
I think there's a larger salary. You have more money to hire a staff because you have a certain allotment of money where you can hire several people to help you fulfill your duties to the public. But one of the things about being on Detroit City Council as opposed to being a state lawmaker is there's more accountability. People see you. They expect to see you. They expect you to return their calls. They expect you to do things that will help you. Whereas with a state rep, there's a lot more of them. Nobody knows who the hell they are. You never see them in action because they're in Lansing. And if you ask them to do something for you, you can always say, well, I'm a Democrat. Republicans control everything, so I couldn't do it, but I tried. It's in a lot of ways, it's an easier job than being a Detroit City Council person. But to me, if you want to do these jobs, whatever they're paying you, that going in, do the damn job.
Besides this,
don't line your pockets.
Besides the felony that Gabe is charged with now, what other ethical problems has he had in the past for those that don't know?
Yeah. So, and this is funny when you put this on a timeline and you look back at about the same time, Bob Carmack says he was being shaken down by Gabe Leland. I was asking Gabe Leland about some contracts that he had voted for that benefited his girlfriend at the time, Jennifer Fiore, the daughter of Gasper Fiore, the towing king who spent some time in prison himself. And I believe we have a classic cut from one of those Fox 2 stories.
Leland is no stranger to the Fiore family's opulent Grosse Pointe Shores home on exclusive Lakeshore Drive.
At this time, I'm not going to dive into, my personal affairs. What I can say,
this is your car at Gasper Fiore's house on a Saturday morning at sunrise. I mean, this is not speculation. If you're that close to this family, should you be voting on contracts that involve them?
This is a rumor mill town, and
that's your car, right?
I'm not going to deny that.
Since Leland,
well, then it's not a rumor. I don't know why he thought he could get away with that, but it's not inherently illegal what he was doing, right?
Well, it would be very unseemly for a city council member to be spending the night in the mansion of a city contractor, but
is it illegal?
Technically would not be illegal, nor against. Now, it may be illegal under a federal law where you have the obligation of just services to the public, but yeah, I think no one's going to charge him with that. But we had some video of Gabe and his girlfriend walking down Lakeshore Drive, and then I found his city car parked in the driveway at Gasper Fiore's mansion. And we do spend a lot of time doing surveillance, and we do spend a lot of time staking people out. But the way we got both of those clips was serendipity. I had talked to my partner at the time at Fox 2 about camping out in front of the house, which is going to be very tricky because it's on a very high traffic, high profile street. It's right, there's the mansion, and then there's Lake St. Clair. Mm-hmm. In the side streets, the cops brush reporters off like flies when they're there, because in wealthy communities, they don't like you sitting in front of houses if you're not driving a Bentley. But I happened to be driving back from something with my family and saw Jennifer and Gabe walking down the street. And I was driving. They're walking close to the house, and I'm doing a turnaround, and everybody in the car saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What's happening?" I said, "Shut up! Don't say anything. I'll explain to you later." Like, "No, what are you doing? Tell me why you're doing it." I was like, "Just be quiet. I don't want you on the audio, on the video." And somehow we jumped out. My wife started driving, and then I was able to shoot some of that video from the front seat of the car. So now that I know he's hanging out there, I live on the east side. That's on the east side. I drive by there on a regular basis just to spot check it. But I was coming back from dropping my daughter off from taking the SAT, and I happened to drive by the house, and I saw the city councilman's car in the driveway. I said, I got to get a picture of that. Yeah. So some of this incriminating evidence, we had a lot of plans to try and get it, but in the end, it was just being out and about and keeping your eyes open and trying to keep everybody in the car from making too much of a ruckus.
So $2 million worth he voted on contracts for his girlfriend's company. Well,
for companies run by his girlfriend, but he didn't want to talk about that. He didn't want to talk about the relationship. He didn't want to talk about any of that stuff. We sat with him in his office for about half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, and it got to a point where it's like, you know what, dude, we're just going around and round. So I gave him one more opportunity to own up to it.
Are you dating Gasper Fiore's daughter? Yes or no? Have you spent the night at his house? Yes or no? Have you vacationed with them? Yes or no?
The city charter says public officials must disclose financial interests in contracts if an immediate family member is involved. As you can see in these Facebook photos, Leland and Jennifer Fiore sure seem to spend an awful lot of time with each other's family.
Are they still together?
No, they have. They've gone their own ways.
You ruined them.
No, they had broken up before this.
Why do you hate love?
Exactly. Well, love is love, man. What's the matter with you? Spying on innocent lovers like that. What the heck?
Perhaps if someone loved me, I wouldn't feel so left out.
Driving around the city thinking, oh, look, there are a couple of people holding hands over there. I'm going to stop and take some pictures.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, man. It's crazy.
One last clip you sent over, I guess, really illustrates what you were talking about earlier with Gabe and how he's kind of tries to buddy up on you.
Yeah, he tries to play things off. Now, by this point, Gabe doesn't want to meet with us anytime because you can see when we meet him on the street, it doesn't go so well. And when we meet him in his office, it doesn't go so well. So as people, I hope know, I call people to sit down and talk like adults before I decide I have to go get them. And on this particular day, we called and he wouldn't meet with us. And so then we had to stay outside City Hall. It happened to be a freezing, sleeting day. And we sat outside City Hall all day waiting for him. And instead of hiding in the bushes, which we generally don't do, we just stood out there because we're like, everybody knows we're out here. Everybody knows we're out here for him. So what's the big deal? We'll just be here until he comes out. We stood out there for so long that at some point, Mayor Duggan pulled up to the parking lot at City Hall, said, "What are you guys here for?" And I said, "Well, we're waiting for a certain public official." He's like, "Well, you're not waiting for me, are you?" And I said, "No, if we have something to talk to you about, we'll call first." He said, "Okay, well, call me anytime because I don't want to meet you out here." And then he drove back in through the gate and parked his car and went about his business. Well, finally, we're freezing our ass off. And my partner, John Brzezinski, is, a dream partner because when you're sitting there feeling like you've made somebody stay out in miserable conditions too long, because here's how this works. I don't get stories. I'm out of a job. Photographer doesn't get a story with an investigative reporter. They get reassigned to work with another reporter. So the stakes are always higher for me. So I'm always willing to stay there and beyond the point of sense and reason. But I also try and respect, my partner. And so I typically turn to John and say, "John, I don't know if we're going to get him today. Do you want to go home, warm up, and start tomorrow?" And he would say, "I'm good for another hour." And it would turn into 2 hours. So we're standing out there in the freezing rain. I got Red Wings tickets that night, by the way. Everybody by now has left the parking lot. And so we're thinking either he snuck out another entrance. Alberta Tinsley Talabi did that to me one time when I was working at Channel 4. And got a ride on the other side of the building and went home. Of course, I got her the next day in front of her house. So,
that's even worse.
You can run, but you can't hide. And so I said to John, I said, "I think either he's left or he's trying to outweight us." So I said, what we can do is just change up the dynamic. So we made a very public show of getting in our van and driving away. But we only drove around the block to get a different vantage point. And as soon as we parked on the other side of the parking lot, Gabe and his assistant come walking out. "Councilman, will you talk to us about Robert Carmack?"
Bring the midnight oil with me.
Well, did you, whatever it takes to get some answers, did you extort Robert Carmack?
Here's a flyer. I got a lot of activities going on in the district. You can take a look at that.
Are some of those activities shaking down contractors for money? Gabe Leland won't talk about his dealings with...
I'm just amazed that he thought he could get away with this. And once again, I think he picked the wrong guy with Bob Carmack.
He got Carmack on the wrong day at the time that he was trying to allegedly shake down Carmack. Carmack's father was dying or had just died.
That pissed him off.
And Carmack is involved in politics. One of the reasons why, Carmack is somebody we listen to is because Carmack's been an insider, and he's been a guy who's been a backroom player for a long time. So when he tells you something dirty is going on, there's a good chance it's true. There may be a good chance he was involved in it, but the bottom line is he knows his way around. So we tend to give people some credence, and he's been able to back up what he said in the case of Gabe Leland. He certainly convinced the feds, and now it looks like this case is going to resolve soon. But when you say that it's surprising that people think they can get away with this, consider what happened to Gabe Leland. He was indicted almost 2 years ago, and City Council has taken no action whatsoever to limit his power.
He's one of their own.
To criticize him. And the ethics board in Detroit, the ethics commission, has done nothing to raise a question about this or to even just say, first of all, no one said anything when we exposed the votes that favored his girlfriend's companies. Yeah. Nobody.
Before we wrap on him, you alluded to 4 other recent bribery scandals within the Detroit City Council. Where does this rank with that, in your opinion?
I would say it's probably near the bottom because we have a council member who extorted, allegedly, because she died before she got her day in court, $150,000 in cash and loans and 17 pounds of sausage.
I was going to say, yeah, the 17 pounds of sausage is the one that seems to stand out, but there's a lot more money. What was her name? Is it Kay? Kay
Everett, the Mad Hatter.
Yeah.
Then you had Lonnie Bates, who was a no-show city employee and a disaster as a school board member. So what happens? He gets elected to city council. And then he has handymen do work at his house, and then tries to divert city money to them. And then he puts his mistress and her daughter on the city payroll without requiring them to do any work, which was a story Scott Lewis exposed at Fox 2, which was tremendous.
Yeah.
He eventually was convicted. And then you have Monica Conyers, of course, who was rock star crook. And finally, Charles Pugh, who succeeded her as city council president, who stopped going to work, had all kinds of campaign finance matters, and eventually was essentially fired by the emergency manager for refusing to come to work. And then later was charged with, inappropriate liaisons with underage people.
Yeah.
Pleaded guilty and is now doing up to 15 years in state prison. So taking $15,000 from a city contractor, which of course he won't admit to, he'll just admit to the generic charge of misconduct in office, probably makes him he's fifth place in our quintet of city council members who have let us down. When Barb McQuaid, the former U.S. attorney, said that she hoped that the prosecution of Kwame Kilpatrick would end the culture of corruption in Metro Detroit, that was at best a wish.
I won't change my mind on anything, regardless of the facts that are set out before me. I'm dug in, and I'll never change.
Freight nut, freight out, freight nut, freight out, freight nut infinity, freight out infinity +1. No.
It's time for our great debate, but if you're trying to figure out who should sell your house, there is no debate. First round knockout. It's Lindsay Broadwell. She is the real estate expert sponsor of ML Soul of Detroit. Your house is one of your most valuable investments, and that's why you need an agent you can trust and who knows the business inside and out. Lindsay started her career at Hall Financial. Now she's an expert in real estate. She'll make sure you get the most out of your house, and everything goes smoothly by finding you a home that fits your lifestyle. Buyers, sellers, especially first-time buyers, make sure you contact Lindsay Broadwell. You can find her at broadwellhomes.com. That's broadwellhomes.com, or call 248-767-7767. That's 248-767-7767. She's a licensed realtor at RE/MAX Nexus. That's broadwellhomes.com. Tell Lindsay ML sent you. We're talking about the past. Burton Leland, Gabe Leland, soon to be part of the past. The past is coming back in Washington, and that is President Trump has announced that he plans to resume his briefings on COVID-19. These were quite the staple of evening news broadcasts for weeks, and then they disappeared. And now they're coming back. And I'm wondering, do we think this is a good thing? This is a bad thing? This is a political thing? This is something Joe Biden should be able to have equal time? What do you think? Are you guys going to set your clocks for those evening briefings with Donald Trump and the rest of the crew?
100%. I'll watch them. It was interesting watching, I'll put it that way. But I also think it's a political thing, and I think it's a smart political thing. Say what you want about how you feel about Trump or his administration, but Kellyanne Conway is very good at what she does, and she said, you're losing this coronavirus argument, which it seems kind of silly that it's a political argument, but you're losing it, and the reason you're losing it is because you haven't been out there leading in months. I think it's a good thing. I don't know what it can hurt, but then again, he's the president, and it's up to his whims. If he's out there for 2.5 hours, it might start hurting him again.
Sean, are you going to set your VCR?
I think
VCR beta.
I think I don't know if it'll help him or not. I think it's risky, but he has no choice, right? I mean, why did he stop them, Mark? He stopped them because they were hurting.
Well, no, he stopped them because he didn't like doing them. I don't.
But he was starting to lose. His numbers were starting to go down, right? Because he was saying things that were really hurting him. He was starting to alienate part of the 65 and over group, right? Some of the seniors who maybe swing conservative, and he was starting to lose those. There were other groups he was starting to alienate a little bit because of those long press conferences, especially if he had to think on the top of his, had to think on quickly. He couldn't do it.
I think one of his last briefings was the one where he suggested that maybe bleach would be a good idea. That you
exactly.
Could take bleach. That felt like that felt like the jump in the shark moment for the briefings. Matt, did you think those things helped him or hurt him? And do you think that they will going forward?
I think it hurt him if he's not using a speechwriter. I think if he follows a script and keeps the facts,
but he won't.
I think he'll be fine. Well, he won't, but that's what I want him to do, because we need a leader right now, and we need honest to God facts, not assumptions or what I might do. This shouldn't be political, even though it is.
What concerns me about these briefings, and I'm reserving judgment till I see them, is Trump was criticized last week for speaking in the Rose Garden, a public facility, the White House, where Clinton was criticized for using the White House as a fundraising tool, and he was rightly criticized because there's no way you should be raising money for your political campaigns by renting out parts of the White House, by letting people sleep in the Lincoln bedroom in return for a donation. That was absolutely wrong.
Yeah,
it was wrong then, it's wrong now. Trump was criticized last week for having a largely political speech from the Rose Garden, again, part of the White House, an official place that should be strictly used for government business. He attacked
Didn't realize that.
Biden over and over again, which I got no problem with somebody attacking Biden. Listen, if we're looking for perfect people, Biden's only going to be near the top if you're going alphabetically. So I got no problem with somebody kicking old Joe in the head. But you can't do it from government facility. And if these briefings turn into political speeches, if they're orchestrated by his campaign team rather than his government team, I think there's a problem here. And I think it raises the question as to whether or not they should be shown unedited and whether or not Joe Biden should get equal time. We've talked about that here before. If one side says something, the other side should have an opportunity to respond, which puts us into 3 hours of Trump and Biden every night. Oh my God. I'd rather have the virus again.
I don't think Biden wants equal time right now.
Well, where is he, by the way? I mean, that's what
I mean.
His basement.
I think that hurts. You got to be seen. You have.
It
to
hadn't
be
hurt
seen.
so far, if you believe the polls.
Well, that's because people just don't like the current president.
Well, and that's the strategy, right? He's trying to make it all about Trump.
But back to the original point, though, that's why I think it's good for Trump if he's out there and is looking like he's taking this seriously. His numbers will start going up, especially.
It could be. Yeah, it could be.
Especially if the other guys nowhere to be found.
Well, I think the other day he just said you should wear a mask. So he's come full circle. He's like a battleship. It takes him a long time to turn, but it seems like he eventually gets headed in the direction he wants to go. But Biden's strategy seems to be twofold as far as I can tell. One is don't say anything because you're only going to hurt yourself. It's sort of the old it's better to let people think you're an idiot than open your mouth and prove it. And the other strategy is Trump seems to be punching himself out pretty good. Why should you throw a blow when Trump's taking care of himself? So time will tell whether this is a good thing or not. I guess Mark is looking forward to it. Sean and Matt, not so sure. And I'm just going to say, if he sticks to policy, if he sticks to the facts, hearing from our elected leaders is never a bad thing. But if it becomes political, that's a problem.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
There's nothing geeky about Luke Nowacki. The man is a god among men. He's big-hearted. He picks up a lot of tabs, which sometimes becomes a problem depending on how many tabs because you got to work the next day, but he never stops working for you. So ask yourself a question. Were your investments prepared for the coronavirus downturn? Well, if you were working with Luke Nowacki, you still wouldn't have been prepared for a worldwide pandemic, who was, but you would have expected a downturn. He tells his clients that when investing in equities, a good expectation is to lose 1/5 to 1/3 of your equity value about once every 5 years. That's normal for market fluctuation, and the equity markets have never failed to come back every time. Nobody recommends getting off a roller coaster at the bottom of the first hill. That's a good way to get run over. If that's not something you can handle, then your account should probably incorporate a little less risk. If you have concerns whether your investment accounts are positioned to match your risk tolerance, call Luke Nowacki at 248-663-4748. That's 248-663-4748. Or email at lnowacki@pinnaclewealthstrategies.com. You can find a link on our website. He'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc. Member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance
Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
So I'm not here to debate the Second Amendment, but our Geek of the Week is a couple that believe in the Second Amendment, but I think are not doing the Second Amendment any good service. They are Mark and Patricia McCloskey. You may have seen them standing outside their opulent marble-lined mansion in St. Louis, brandishing weapons as anti-police brutality protesters went by. First of all, it's tough to look tough when you're wearing a pink polo shirt and holding an AR-15. Now, I know somebody's going to correct me. It's not an AR-15. It's something. Anyways, it's an AR-15-like weapon. That's a tough look to pull off. Anyways, Mark and Patricia have been charged with unlawful use of a weapon for, they say, defending their home against people who are just walking past their home. Now, I have no problem with the right to bear arms. I think you should be able to defend your home. But to come out and brandish a weapon in front of people who are just walking past your home, you're making a political statement. You are trying to send a message that has nothing to do with your right to bear arms. It has something to do with you being a pain in the ass and being all about you, which is not really the way the world works. Now, they're complaining that they're being singled out, that they're being picked on, and they're criticizing the lefty prosecutor who they say are trying to make an example of them. Well, guess what? Sometimes lefties work to your advantage, because what the prosecutor is saying, that if they're convicted, the prosecutor is going to offer them a diversion program. Mm-hmm. What could be more lefty than that? So, Mark and Patricia, I don't think you get the Second Amendment. I don't think you get the law at all. And by the way, you're lawyers. Yeah. So maybe you can use this time for some quiet reflection. Maybe you can oil your pistol, if you know what I'm saying, because you are our Geeks of the Week.
The kids are soft.
I don't care for that guy. Me neither. Too soft.
I'm gonna pretend like you didn't just make my dick go soft.
History can be soft and life can be hard. It can be hard to save money, but I have a friend who can make it easy. That's David Hall and Hall Financial. They're working around the clock to help you save money by refinancing. Rates are lower than just about ever, and if you haven't refinanced in the past year, Hall Financial is here to help. Now's the time to lower your monthly payment and keep some extra money in your pocket as we go through some very turbulent times. Refinancing can probably help you save money right away by skipping a couple payments. So why not see if you can save some money by lowering your rate and cutting your term? If you're worried about these guys getting sick, they are sick of working so damn hard for you. No, that's not true. They work hard. Dan Morrison is my man at Hall Financial. He's working like a dog and loving virtually every minute of it. You can give him a call at 248-308-5000 and see if they can save you some money. That's 248-308-5000. Hall Financial. Lower payments, better options, more personal attention. You can link to them through our website, mlsoulofdetroit.com. It's NMLS 1467435. And now Professor Matt Jennings joins us from a bunker of knowledge. He's on the road spreading information in the same way that people who don't wear masks spread the coronavirus, except this won't kill you. You may just wish you were dead.
Okay. A man by the name of Charles Hall of Indiana downed an FW-190 German fighter plane while on an escort mission on July 21st, 1943. This day marked the first air victory for the United States by a black airman in the European theater. The group of airmen he belonged to was called the Red Tails.
Yeah, Tuskegee.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused with the red-tailed hawk or ML's favorite bird, the peacock.
Oh, the effing peacock. It's a certain genus of the phylum, of the family of the.
And this week in 1973, Jim Croce started a 2-week run at the top of the charts with Bad Leroy Brown.
Mm-hmm.
This wouldn't be his first number one hit, but because of some greedy suits in the record biz, Croce would never be fairly compensated for his work, and he would die nearly 20 days later on his second to last stop of what he decided would be his final tour. That is one of the saddest stories when it comes to a really amazing songwriter and singer to be taken advantage of by a record company.
You're so soft.
Die broke
You're
with
so
all
soft.
the fame. I know.
It's the softest thing I've ever heard.
I've been deep diving on him. It makes me sad.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm glad the Jim Crow era is over.
No, Croce. Damn it.
Oh, yeah, that's a little.
Wait. What's the so? Where's the joke? Come on, man.
Oh, that was a joke. I'm not going to make a real joke about Jim Croce because nobody messes with Jim. In 2004, Martha Stewart was sentenced.
Wait, Matt. Is this going to be funny or is this drama? I want to know ahead of time.
It's going to be. The rest is all drama.
Okay.
This week in 2004, Martha Stewart was sentenced to 5 months in prison and 5 months of home confinement, in addition to being fined $30,000 and given 2 years probation for lying about stock, which they say she allegedly sold after it was brought to a boil and reduced to a simmer for 30 minutes. Okay, so what is our history
Sean's not
lesson
impressed.
this week?
No, that was good.
All of a sudden, that Jim Croce thing is looking like the funniest thing so far. And he died. He was the second guy to die in this segment.
I'm glad he died.
There's a lesson to be learned in this segment, so just listen up. What is the lesson, guys?
To never do this again?
Sooner or later, we will all find ourselves in a battle. And maybe it's much akin to the battle of the Tuskegee Airmen fighting two wars, where Jim Croce, who even with all his fame could barely put food on the table because of greedy record execs. And yes, even Martha Stewart, who battled that huge thatch of down there hair after spending 5 months in prison, which would be a whole lot easier if she had the Lawnmower 3.0 available at manscaped.com and use promo code ML to check out for 20%. Either way, whatever battle you find yourself in, remember the words of Jim Croce.
Oh, my
If you
God.
dig it, do it. And if you dig it a lot, do it twice. And that's something worth fighting for.
Wow, and I think they'll throw in free shipping with that, too, if you throw that promo code.
Well, hey, what the F just happened?
No one knows. No one knows.
It was a lesson.
Am I getting punked? This is some kind of Andy Kaufman revival thing here going on.
If
What
I
the
do the
heck
same
is going
thing
on?
over and over again, it's going to get old. I'm going to jump around, keep you guys guessing.
No. This is how, Matt, I love you to death, but if you do the same thing over and over again, it's how you get better. So don't veer. Keep dribbling. Keep taking jump shots, man. Keep practicing your
it's
free
good to
throws.
know that this piece sucked to Sean. God damn
Keep
it.
practicing your free throws. You know what I mean? Keep running your routes. Whatever lame sports metaphor you want to use. Don't give up. I feel like you gave up today. I don't want you to keep giving up. Come on, man. Get back on it and keep telling those goddamn jokes.
It all depends what you do over and over again, because I've heard that some of it can make you blind.
Terrible.
See you guys.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
So what's a cooler way to describe your band than we were post-punk before punk even happened? And that's what Chris Franz calls the Talking Heads in his new book, Remain in Love. It is a memoir of his time in the Talking Heads and also in a side project, the Tom Tom Club, in which he dishes plenty of dirt, or maybe it's not dirt. Maybe he shares some insights on people like Johnny Ramone, Lou Reed, and others who were really big in the CBGB late 70s scene in New York City. The Talking Heads were kind of your classic new wave roots band, where they came from the Rhode Island School of Design, kind of artsy-fartsy guys and women who decided they could play instruments and they had something to say. And while you're familiar with some of their big hits, like Once in a Lifetime and Love in Wartime, which I think is probably my favorite, I tend to find that when I hear the Talking Heads now on the radio, they were so far ahead of their time, they almost feel dated to me. It almost feels like they have nothing to offer, because I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard that a million times. Well, that's kind of a shame that happens when you're the ones who started it, that now you become kind of tired. But we found a hit that we're going to tell you a little, not really a hit, but an early Talking Heads song that comes with a really cool story, and it's called Morningside. Well, it's pretty easy to tell that's the Talking Heads. You got that sort of David Byrne lyric, and
that's a cool song, man.
It's awesome.
It is a cool song, and I only know about it because Franz wrote about it in his book. He says that Byrne took the sole writing credit for that, which is pretty nervy because half of that song is the rhythm section, which is him and his wife Tina Weymouth on bass, and eventually, this got resolved where Byrne said, "Oh, it was a mistake, and you guys can have some writing credit." But it may come as no surprise that there's a lot of dishing on David Byrne in this book. That he's egotistical, he's antisocial, he's kind of an opportunist. There's a little anecdote where when they were participating in an arts exhibition that Byrne went in the night before and moved all of his stuff to the front of the gallery. So it looked like it was a David Byrne exhibition with other guys, sort of puppet show and Spinal Tap. And
wow.
And he says, I think David Byrne's somewhere on the spectrum. Oh, shit, that's David Byrne right now. So at some point, David Byrne started trying to veer off on his own. Brian Eno, who had been a big new wave producer, was involved with David Bowie and some other people, wanted to become one of the Talking Heads, but they kind of said, "Nah, why don't you just, stay in your lane?" Anyways, at one point when Byrne was doing his own thing, Chris and Tina started the Tom Tom Club, which was very successful. And after they sold 1 million records, Byrne dismissed them as, well, that's merely commercial music. David Byrne hated Tina Weymouth. And in fact, at one point, they kind of dragged her into the band because they couldn't find anybody they wanted to work with in New York. And so she kind of learned to play bass. And there was one point early on in their career where David Byrne had 3 auditions for her to stay in the band, which is pretty nervy, especially when her boyfriend's a drummer. And then at one point, when they went out on tour, he hired a second bass player to go out on tour, which is really kind of a big FU. So,
like Billy Joel or something.
Before we bounce, I got to check in with Sean. I was reading your piece on college football. Is it going to happen? It sounds like you're telling us not to count on it, but what do you really think? If you had to bet.
If I had to bet, I would bet that they don't finish, that they don't have a full season. And I would bet that they probably don't have a season at all in the fall, and that they will do their best to try to have one in the spring.
So do you think they'll start and then pull the plug?
They could. I mean, a couple of those conferences, the SEC in particular down south, the Southeast Conference, are going to do everything they can to try to start, right? It's just, the money issues are a little bit different down there. The cultural sense, what it means to people.
How are the money issues different down there?
Those schools, well, at least from the Big Ten, and I'm thinking specifically with Michigan.
Sure.
The endowments aren't the same.
Oh, okay. For the school overall, not the athletic department.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotcha. Okay.
And I just think in a lot of those schools, like Alabama's enrollment's gone crazy in part because
football.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that happens even here in Michigan. Mm-hmm. All right. I mean, Michigan State to a lesser degree, but in Michigan, people push back on me, and I've read this and argued this before. And they talk about the thousands of kids they turn down every year, right? So they don't need football, but that's not true. A lot of the kids from the East Coast come here because they want to similarly, a school it's not quite an Ivy League school, but it's a really good academic place, but they have football, right? So, or they want to get away from mom and dad. But
anybody that disagrees with you that should just look at Don Gannum back in the day in his comment about how football is the front porch of the university.
Absolutely.
Very, very important.
Thousands more Michigan applicants have been turned down for dates.
This guy, I knew there was a snarky comment.
Yeah, you knew there was something. Yeah, but the endowments are a little bit. I mean, they're getting better down south, but for some of the schools in the Big Ten, it's a little bit different.
Do you see?
And that's the only way that Michigan is well endowed financially.
Good one. Do you see a scenario, Sean, where say the SEC plays and fights through it, and be damned who gets sick, and maybe the Big Ten does and doesn't, and one conference does, one conference doesn't?
I mean, that's possible, but boy, that would take a lot of guts, and I don't want to say selfishness, but that would not be a good look if they're the only ones doing it. I think they'd have to have the Big 12, maybe the ACC. It's a little trickier in the ACC, but it's going to be interesting to see. I think the Pac-10 would be a little bit more in line with the Big 10.
Mm-hmm.
Pac-10 being out west, and UCLA and Washington, USC, those schools, Arizona. But we'll see.
Anyways, folks, we appreciate you sticking with us as usual. We'll be back next week. Hopefully we'll have somebody exciting or something exciting to talk about. This is the home of long stories well told. Hopefully we lived up to that today. We appreciate your feedback. Let us know. If we're not hitting our mark, you can tell us at mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. You can give us a call at 313-288-9070. That's Butterfield 89070. We've got some feedback. We're going to have to wait till next week because we've been running long. We have some donors to thank. I'm going to thank them next week because we're running a little bit long. And you can donate by hitting the PayPal button at mlsoulofdetroit.com. You can buy our great merchandise at drewandmikestore.com. We're having a sale on hockey jerseys. Get a hockey jersey at a discount, 20% off. You get a free book. Please rate us, subscribe, share us, and support the other shows on the Red Shovel Network. That's Charlie LaDuff's No BS News Hour. That's the Drew and Mike podcast. That's The Big Show. And, of course, No Filter Sports with Eli, Denny, and Bob. And if you're out there looking to get some cars or to get some work done on your car, check out dealsinthed.com. That's the Zott car dealerships. They've been a good friend of the show. We hope you can appreciate and support them. And if you want to do some socially distanced pedal pubbing in Detroit, getting on a bike, seeing the city in a safe way, go to MichiganPeddler.com. That's Michigan, PEDALER.com. They're friends of the show too, and we hope that you will find their services as suitable as we have. And now it's time for our good friend of the show, Cyrus, to get us the hell out of here.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Next week, the Soul of Detroit moves to its new day and time. Be there Wednesdays at noon.
I think it's going to be crazy. I think it's going to be vicious.
The ultimate competition has only just begun. The women won the first task, but can they stay together?
You threatened me. Stay out of my face. It's over.
While the men are desperate for a victory.
I gave you one small job and you fell asleep doing it.
This Wednesday, the task is tougher.
And you're going to be working on corporate jets.
And the reward is bigger. But when all is said and done, the real shocker is who will hear these final words.
This is a tough one. You're fired.